Vedanta Narayan Gosai Maharaj Shri Gurudev ki jai. Nityalila Pravishtam Vishnupara Shatara Shatashmad Shri Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Gosai Maharaj ki jai. Nityalila Pravishtam Vishnupara Ashatara Shatashmad Shri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Nityalila Pravishtam Vishnupara Ashatara Shatashmad Shri Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Gosai Maharaj ki jai. Nityalila Pravishtam Vishnupara Ashatara Shatashmad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosai Prabhupada ki jai. Nityalila Pravishtam Vishnupad Mahabhagavat Srila Vaksharas Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nityalila Pravishta Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Nityalila Pravishta Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Patadash Raghunath Shara Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki jai. नाम चर्च लहरस ठाकुर की जय. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय. श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल ब्रज मंडल मथुर वृंदावन धाम की जय. सर्व अभिष्ट विदात गिरिराज महाराज की जय. श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जय. श्री मुन देवी गंगा देवी की जय. श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय. श्री भक्ति देवी की जय. श्री पूर्णमासी योगमाया की जय. श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय. श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय. समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय. श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल. दंडवत प्रणाम प्रद्युम्न प्रभु. ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जना शलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः. नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त नारायणीति नामिने. नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने. वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरतिशे नमः. गुरुवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकायै तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः. यं प्रव्रजन्तम् अनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहाव पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवोऽभिनेदुस्तं सर्वभूत हृदयमुनिमानतोऽस्मि. नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्. शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदन्तस्तो यभद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सतम्. नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवत्तुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे त्वां नयमां शरणन्तिकम्. भक्त्या विहीना अपराधलक्षय क्षिप्ताष्टकामादितरङ्गमध्ये कृपामयि त्वं शरणं प्रपन्ना वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दम्. भज श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासरि गौर भक्तवृन्द. हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Dandavat pranams Rup Manjari Didi, Raseshwari Mataji and Indira Mataji, Dandavat pranams. So continuing on with the description of the characteristics of King Purañjana. Lord Shiva disappeared after instructing the Prachetas in this way and being duly worshipped by them. Okay, power just came back. Anyhow, I'm back. I'm using my Wi-Fi right now. Sorry, my hotspot. But the power did just come back. Let me know if this is okay. Like if the connection's not switched over to the Wi-Fi. Otherwise, okay. Nārada's moon. I'm gonna just read these first few verses, and then I'll check to see how the internet is. If it's not good, I'll switch over to the Wi-Fi. After instructing the Prachetas in this way and being duly worshipped by them, Lord Shiva disappeared. The Prachetas recited the Rudra Gita standing in the water for 10,000 years. Link. While the Prachetas were undergoing austerities, their father, Prachina-Bodhishat, was performing various fruitive activities. Nārada decided to enlighten him because he was in the dynasty of the great Dhruva Maharaj. So then Nārada asked Prachina-Bodhishat. Compassionate Nārada, who was conversant of the spiritual truth, met Prachina-Bodhi, who was attached to karma, and asked, "What do you desire to achieve by these karmas? It is not possible to get rid of miseries and attain happiness by doing karma." Pratyabhahishat's request to Nārada. Since my intelligence is entangled in karma, I do not know the ultimate goal of life. Kindly instruct me in knowledge so that I can get out of this entanglement. The misfortune of Grihamedis. One whose intelligence is fixed in the false occupational duties of household life, sons, wives, wealth, etc., does not attain liberation, but foolishly wanders in different bodies in material existence. In order to make Pratyabhahi detached from fruitive activities, Nārada, by his power of yoga, showed him the sacrificial animals he had killed. Nārada shows the sacrificed animals. Please see in the sky those animals which you have sacrificed without compassion. All these animals are awaiting your death to eventually pierce your body with iron horns. Note, overindulgence in animal sacrifices is risky because as soon as there is a small discrepancy, the slaughtered animal may not be promoted to a human form of life. Consequently, the person performing the sacrifice will be responsible for the death of the animal, like a murderer. So now Nārada narrates the story of Purañjana. Old story. In this connection, let me check, is it okay, the connection? I guess so. In this connection, I will narrate an old history of a king called Purañjana, one who embodied. Please understand as I speak. Note, this is an allegorical presentation. Because a person entangled in material activities wants to hear stories of material activities, Nārada Muni related the topics of King Purañjana. He is, however, none other than King Pratyabhahi himself. Purañjana's activities were celebrated. He had a friend named Avigyata, the Supersoul, whose activities were unknown. Note, the eternal living entity is called Brihatshrava because he is famous for his activities, although they are performed in different types of bodies. Purañjana traveled all over the world to find a suitable place to live for fulfilling his desires gratification, but he could not find a place of his liking, and therefore became morose and disappointed. But the living entity cannot be happy in any form of life or on any planet in the material world. The city of 9 gates. Once while wandering on the southern side of the Himalayas in Bharatvarsh, a city with 9 gates with all auspicious. Okay, actually we read to verse 12 yesterday, so it's a little choppy, huh? Okay, then you know what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over to my Wi-Fi, and then as soon as the power goes out, since I'm already set up, I'll just quickly go to my hotspot. Okay, now I'm on Wi-Fi connection. It should be fast. And if any problem happens, just let me know and I'll switch over. Okay. So verse 12. King Purañjana had unlimited desires for sense enjoyment. Consequently, he traveled all over the world to find a place where his desires could be fulfilled. Unfortunately, he found a feeling of insufficiency. Everywhere. Sada ekada himavato dakshinesh. Again, also. Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay. Sada sa ekada himavata dakshine shattasan tadarsha navabhirdvarpi puram lakshita lakshanam. Once, while wandering in this way, he saw on the southern side of the Himalayas a place named Bharatvarsh, India, a city that had 9 gates all about and was characterized by all auspicious facilities. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The tract of land in the south of the Himalaya mountains is the land of India, which is known as Bharatvarsha. When a living entity takes birth in Bharatvarsha, he is considered to be most fortunate. Indeed, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has stated, Bharata bhumite hoila manusha janma jar, janma sartak kori koro, para upakar. Thus, whoever takes birth in the land of Bharatvarsha attains all the facilities of life. He may take advantage of all these facilities for both material and spiritual advancement, and thus make his life successful. After attaining the goal of life, one may distribute his knowledge and experience all over the world for humanitarian purposes. In other words, one who takes birth in the land of Bharatvarsh, by virtue of his past pious activities, gets full facility to develop the human form of life. In India, the climatic condition is such that one can live very peacefully without being disturbed by material conditions. Indeed, during the time of Maharaj Yudhishthira or Lord Ramachandra, people were free from all anxieties. There was not even extreme cold or extreme heat. The three kinds of miserable conditions, adhyatmika, adhibhautika, and adidaivika, miseries inflicted by the body and the mind itself, and those inflicted by other living entities and natural disturbances, were all absent during the reign of Lord Ramachandra or Maharaj Yudhishthira. But at present, compared to other countries on earth, India is artificially disturbed. Despite these material disturbances, however, the country's culture is such that one can easily attain the goal of life, namely salvation or liberation from material bondage. Thus, in order to take birth in India, one must have performed many pious activities in a past life. In this word, the word Lakshita Lakshanam indicates that the human body attained in Bharatvarsha is very auspicious. Vedic culture is full of knowledge, and a person born in India can fully take advantage of Vedic cultural knowledge and the cultural system known as Varnashram Dharma. Even at the present time, as we travel all over the world, we see that in some countries, human beings have many material facilities, but no facilities for spiritual advancement. We find everywhere the defects of one-sided facilities and a lack of full facilities. A blind man can walk, but cannot see, and a lame man cannot walk, but can see. Andha pangu nyai. The blind man may take the lame man over his shoulder, and as he walks, the lame man may give him directions. Thus, combined, they may work, but individually, neither the blind man nor the lame man can walk successfully. Similarly, this human form of life is meant for the advancement of spiritual life and for keeping the material necessities in order. Especially in the Western countries, there are ample facilities for material comforts, but no one has any idea of spiritual advancement. Many are hankering after spiritual advancement, but many cheaters come, take advantage of their money, bluff them, and go away. Fortunately, the Krishna consciousness movement is there to give all facilities for both material and spiritual advancement. In this way, people in Western countries may take advantage of this movement. In India, any man in the villages, unaffected by the industrial cities of India, can live in any condition and make spiritual advancement. The body has been called the city of 9 gates, and these 9 gates include 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, 1 mouth, a genital, and a rectum. When the 9 gates are clean and working properly, it is to be understood that the body is healthy. In India, these 9 gates are kept clean by the villagers who rise early in the morning, bathe in the well or rivers, go to the temples to attend Mangalarti, chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and take prasad. In this way, one can take advantage of all the facilities of human life. We are gradually introducing this system in different centers in our society in the Western countries. One who takes advantage of it becomes more and more enlightened in spiritual life. At the present moment, India may be compared to the lame man, and the Western countries to the blind man. For the past 2,000 years, India has been subjected by the rule of foreigners, and the legs of progress have been broken. In the Western countries, the eyes of the people have become blind due to the dazzling glitter of material opulence. The blind man of the Western countries and the lame man of India should combine together in this Krishna consciousness movement. Then the lame man of India can walk with the help of the Westerner, and the blind Westerner can see with the help of the lame man. In short, the material advancement of the Western countries and the spiritual assets of India should combine for the elevation of all human society. Pujana Prabhu is asking, where is Bharatvarsha? Bharatvarsha is India. Prakarapavanatala parikara akshatoranai swarnaropya yasai shringai sankulam sarvato grihai. That city was surrounded by walls and parks, and within it were towers, canals, windows, and outlets. The houses were decorated with domes made of gold, silver, and iron. Purport. The body is protected by walls of skin. The hairs on the body are compared to parks, and the highest parts of the body, like the nose and head, are compared to towers. The wrinkles and depressions on different parts of the body are compared to trenches or canals. The eyes are compared to windows, and the eyelids are compared to protective gates. The 3 types of metal, gold, silver, and iron, represents the 3 modes of material nature. Gold represents goodness, silver passion, and iron ignorance. The body is also sometimes considered to be a bag containing 3 elements, 3 dhatu, mucus, bile, and air, kapha, pitta, and vayu. Yasatma buddhi kunape tridhatuke. According to Bhagavatam 10:84-13, one who considers this bag of mucus, bile, and air to be the self is considered no better than a cow or an ass. Nilaspatika vaidurya muktamara katarunai klipta harmyas talim diptan Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. The doors of the houses in that city were made of sapphire, crystal, diamonds, pearls, emeralds, and rubies. Because of the luster of the houses in the capital, the city was compared to the celestial town named Bhogavati. Purport. In the city of the body, the heart is considered to be the capital. Just as the capital of a state is especially gorgeously filled with various high buildings and lustrous palaces, The heart of the body is filled with various desires and plans for material enjoyment. Such plans are sometimes compared to valuable jewels such as sapphires, rubies, pearls, and emeralds. The heart becomes the center for all planning for material enjoyment. Sabachattvara ratyabhir akridayatanapanai chaitadvaja patakabhir yuktam vidrumabedibhi. In that city, there were many assembly houses, street crossings, streets, restaurants, gambling houses, markets, resting places, flags, festoons, and beautiful parks. All these surrounded the city. Purport. In this way, the capital is described. In the capital, there are assembly houses and many squares, many street crossings, avenues and streets, many gambling places, markets, and places of rest, all decorated with flags and festoons. The squares are surrounded with railings and are devoid of trees. The heart of the body can be compared to the assembly house, for the living entity is within the heart, along with the Paramatma, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 15:15. Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivishto matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha. The heart is the center of all remembrance, forgetfulness, and deliberation. In the body, the eyes, ears, and nose are different places of attraction for sense enjoyment, and the streets for going hither and thither may be compared to different types of air blowing within the body. The yogic process for controlling the air within the body and the different nerves is called sushumna, the path of liberation. The body is also a resting place, because when the living entity becomes fatigued, he takes rest within the body. The palms and soles of the feet are compared to flags and festoons. Puryastu bahyopavane devyadruma latakule nadarvihangali kula kolahala jalashaye. On the outskirts of that city were many beautiful trees and creepers encircling a nice lake. Also surrounding that lake were many groups of birds and bees that were always chanting and humming. Purport. Since the body is a great city, there must be various arrangements such as lakes and gardens for sense enjoyment. Of the various parts of the body, those which incite sexual impulses are referred to here indirectly. Because the body has genitals, when the living entity attains the right age, be he a man or a woman, he becomes agitated by the sex impulse. As long as one remains a child, he is not agitated by seeing a beautiful woman. Although the sense organs are present, unless the age is ripe, there is no sex impulse. The favorable conditions surrounding the sex impulse are compared here to a garden or a nice solitary park. When one sees the opposite sex, naturally the sex impulse increases. It is said that if a man in a solitary place does not become agitated upon seeing a woman, he is to be considered a brahmachari. But this practice is almost impossible. The sex impulse is so strong that even by seeing, touching, or talking, coming into contact with, or even thinking of the opposite sex, even in so many subtle ways, one becomes sexually impelled. Consequently, a brahmachari or sannyasi is prohibited to associate with women, especially in a secret place. The Shastras enjoin that one should not even talk to a woman in a secret place, even if she happens to be one's own daughter, sister, or mother. The sex impulse is so strong that even if one is very learned, he becomes agitated in such circumstances. If this is the case, how can a young man in a nice park remain calm and quiet after seeing a beautiful young woman? Hima nirjara viprushmat kusuma karavayuna chalat pravala vitapa nalini tatasampadi. The branches of the trees standing on the bank of the lake received particles of water carried by the spring air from the falls coming down from this icy mountain. Wait, let me read that. Branches of the trees standing on the bank of the lake received particles of water carried by the spring air from the falls coming down from the icy mountain. Purport. In this verse, the word hima nirjara is particularly significant. The waterfall represents a kind of liquid humor, or ras, relationship. In the body, there are different types of humor, ras, or mellow. The supreme mellow relationship is called the sexual mellow, adiras. When this adiras, or sex desire, comes in contact with the spring air moved by Cupid, it becomes agitated. In other words, all these are representations of rup, rasa, gandha, shabda, and sparsha. The wind is sparsha, or touch. The waterfall is ras, or taste. The spring air, kusumakar, is smell. All these varieties of enjoyment make life very pleasing, and thus we become captivated by material existence. What verse are we reading up to? 28. Oh, my screen is not moving, huh? It's just delayed. Okay, well, if my voice starts cutting out, then you can let me know. Send me a WhatsApp message. Nanaranya mriga vratar anabhade muni vratai ahutam manyate panto yatra ko kilaku jitai. In such an atmosphere, even the animals of the forest became non-violent and non-envious like great sages. Consequently, the animals did not attack anyone. Over and above everything was the cooing of the cuckoos. Any passenger passing along that path was invited by the atmosphere to take rest in that nice garden. Purport. A peaceful family life with wife and children is compared to the peaceful atmosphere of the forest. Children are compared to non-violent animals. Sometimes, however, wives and children are called sojana dasyu, burglars in the name of kinsmen. A man earns his livelihood with hard labor, but the result is that he is plundered by his wife and children, exactly as a person in a forest is attacked by some thieves and burglars who take his money. Nonetheless, in family life, the turmoil of wife and children appears to be like the cooing of the cuckoos in the garden of family life. Being invited by such an atmosphere, the person who is passing through such a blissful family life desires to have his family with him. He desires to have his family with him at all costs. Yadrichaya gatam tatra tadarsha pramadottamam Vrityardasha virayantim ekaika shatanayakai. While wandering here and there in that wonderful garden, King Purañjan suddenly came in contact with a very beautiful woman who was walking there without any engagement. She had 10 servants with her, and each servant had hundreds of wives accompanying him. Purport. The body has already been compared to a beautiful garden. During youth, the sex impulse is awakened, and the intelligence, according to one's imagination, is prone to contact the opposite sex. In youth, a man or a woman is in search of the opposite sex by intelligence or imagination, if not directly. The intelligence influences the mind, and the mind controls the 10 senses. 5 of these senses gather knowledge, and 5 work directly. Each sense has many desires to be fulfilled. This is the position of the body, and the owner of the body, Purañjan, who is within the body. Panchashirshahina guptam pratiharena sarvata anvishamanam rishabham aprodham kamarupinam. The woman was protected on all sides by a 5-hooded snake. She was very beautiful and young, and she appeared very anxious to find a suitable husband. Purport. The vital force of a living entity includes the 5 kinds of air working within the body, which are known as Pran, Apan, Vyan, Saman, and Udan. The vital force is compared to a serpent, because a serpent can live by drinking air, simply by drinking air. The vital force carried by the air is described as the Pratihara, or the bodyguard. Without the vital force, one cannot live for a moment. Indeed, all the senses are working under the protection of the vital force. The woman who represents intelligence was searching after a husband. This indicates that intelligence cannot act without consciousness. A beautiful woman is useless unless protected by the proper husband. Intelligence must always be very fresh, therefore the word aprodam, very young, is used here. Material enjoyment means utilizing the intelligence for the sake of rupa, rasa, gandha, shabda, and sparsha, or form, taste, smell, sound, and touch. Sunasam suditim balam, sukapolam varananam, samavinyasta karnabhyam, bibhratim kundalashriyam. The woman's nose, teeth, and forehead were all very beautiful. Her ears were equally very beautiful and were bedecked with dazzling earrings. Purport. The body of intelligence enjoys the objects of sense gratification that covers it, such as smell, vision, and hearing. The word sunasam, beautiful nose, indicates the organ for acquiring knowledge by smell. Similarly, the mouth is the instrument for acquiring knowledge by taste. For by chewing an object and touching it with the tongue, we can understand its tastes. The word sukapolam, nice forehead, indicates a clear brain capable of understanding things as they are. By intelligence, one can set things in order. The earrings set upon the 2 ears are placed there by the work of the intelligence. The ways of acquiring knowledge are described metaphorically. Pishanga nivim sushronim shamam kanakame kalam padbhyam kvanavyam chalantim nupurar devatam iva. The waist and hips of the woman were very beautiful. She was dressed in a yellow sari with a golden belt. While she walked, her ankle bells rang. She appeared exactly like a denizen of the heavens. Purport. This verse expresses the joyfulness of the mind upon seeing a woman with raised hips and breasts, dressed in an attractive sari and bedecked with ornaments. Stano vyanjita kaishoro, samavrito nirantaro, vastrantena niguhantim vridaya gajagaminim. With the end of her sari, the woman is trying to cover her breasts, which were equally round and well placed side by side. She again and again tried to cover them out of shyness, while she walked exactly like a great elephant. Purport. The two breasts represent attachment and envy. The symptoms of rag and dvesh, attachment and envy, are described in Bhagavad Gita 3:34. Indriyasyarte ragadvesho vyavastito tayor navasham agachet to hyasya paripantino. Attraction and repulsion for sense objects are felt by embodied beings, but one should not fall under the control of senses and sense objects because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. These representatives of attachment and envy are very much unfavorable for advancement in spiritual life. One should not be attracted by the breasts of young women. The great Saint Shankaracharya has described the breasts of women, especially young women, as nothing but a combination of muscles and blood. So one should not be attracted by the illusory energy of raised breasts with nipples. They are agents of Maya meant to victimize the opposite sex. Because the breasts are equally attractive, they are described as samavrito. The sex impulse remains in an old man's heart also, even up to the point of death. To be rid of such agitation, one must be very much advanced in spiritual consciousness, like Yamunacharya, who said, Yadavadi mama cheta Krishna padaravinde nava nava rasa dhamanyudamatam rantumasit Taravadi bhatanari sangame smaryamane pavati mukha vikara shushtu nishti vanam cha. Yadavadi mama cheta Krishna padara vinde. That's the meter. Nava nava rasadham manyutatam rantamasit. Okay. Since I have been engaged in the transcendental loving service of Krishna, realizing ever new pleasure in him, whenever I think of sex pleasure, I spit at the thought, and my lips curl with distaste. When one is spiritually advanced, he can no longer be attracted by the lumps of flesh and blood. He can no longer be attracted by lumps of flesh and blood, which are the breasts of young women. The word nirantaro is significant, because although the breasts are situated in different locations, the action is the same. We should not make any distinction between attachment and envy. As described in Bhagavad Gita 3:31, they are both products of Rajagun. Kama esha krodha esha rajaguna samudbhava. The word niguhantim, trying to cover, indicates that even if one is tainted by kam, lobha, krodha, etc., they can be transfigured by Krishna consciousness. In other words, one can utilize kam, lust, for serving Krishna. Being impelled by lust, an ordinary worker will work hard day and night. Similarly, a devotee can work hard day and night to satisfy Krishna. As karmis are working hard to satisfy kam, krodha, a devotee should work in the same way to satisfy Krishna. Similarly, krodha, anger, can also be used in the service of Krishna when it is applied to the non-devotee demons. Hanumanji applied his anger in this way. He was a great devotee of Lord Ramachandra, and he utilized his anger to set fire to the kingdom of Ravan, a non-devotee demon. Thus, kam, lust, can be utilized to satisfy Krishna, and krodha, anger, can be utilized to punish the demons. When both are used for Krishna's service, they lose their material significance and become spiritually important. Tamaha lalitam vira savrida smita shobhanam snigdena panga punkena sprishta premod pramad bhruva. Purañjana, the hero, became attracted by the eyebrows and smiling face of the very beautiful girl, and was immediately pierced by the arrows of her lusty desires. When she smiled shyly, she looked very beautiful to Purañjana, who, although a hero, could not refrain from addressing her. Purport. Every living entity is a hero in two ways. When he is a victim of the illusory energy, he works as a great hero in the material world, as a great leader, politician, businessman, industrialist, etc. And his heroic activities contribute to the material advancement of civilization. One can also become a hero by being a master of the senses, a Goswami. Material activities are false heroic activities, whereas restraining the senses from material engagement is great heroism. However great a hero may be in this material world, he can be immediately conquered by the lumps of flesh and blood known as the breasts of women. In the history of material activities, there are many examples, like the Roman hero Antony, who became captivated by the beauty of Cleopatra. Similarly, a great hero in India named Baji Rao became a victim of a woman during the time of Maharashtrian politics, and he was defeated. From history, we understand that formerly politicians used to employ beautiful girls who were trained as Vishakanya. These girls had poison injected into their bodies from the beginning of their lives, so that in due course of time, they had become so immune to poison and so poisonous themselves that simply by kissing a person, they could kill them. Jeez. These poisonous girls were engaged to see an enemy and kill him with this. Thus, there are many instances in human history. That's horrible. I mean, like horrible abuse to the girls. Anyways. Thus, there are many instances in human history of heroes who have been curbed simply by women. Being part and parcel of Krishna, the living entity is certainly a great hero, but due to his own weakness, he becomes attracted to the material features. Krishna bahirmukha hoya bhogavansha kore, nikatastha maya tare japati adhare. It is said in the Prem-Vivarta that when a living entity wants to enjoy material nature, he is immediately victimized by the material energy. A living entity is not forced to come into the material world. He makes his own being attracted by beautiful women. Every living entity has the freedom to be attracted by material nature or to stand as a hero and resist that attraction. It is simply a question of the living entities being attracted or not being attracted. There is no question of his being forced to come into contact with material energy. One who can keep himself steady and resist the attraction of material nature is certainly a hero and deserves to be called a Goswami. Unless one is the master of the senses, he cannot become a Goswami. The living entity can take one of two positions in this world. He may become a servant of his senses, or he may become a master of them. By becoming a servant of the senses, one becomes a great material hero. And by becoming a master of the senses, he becomes a Goswami, or a spiritual hero. Katvam kanja pala shakshi kayasiha kuta sati imam upapurim piru kem chikir shashi shangsame. My dear lotus-eyed, kindly explain to me where you are coming from, who you are, and whose daughter you are. You appear very chaste. What is the purpose of your coming here? What are you trying to do? Please explain all these things to me. Purport. The first aphorism in the Vedanta Sutra is a Tato Brahma Jigyasa. In the human form of life, one should put many questions to himself and to his intelligence. In the various forms of life lower than human life, the intelligence does not go beyond the range of one's primary necessities, namely eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Dogs, cats, and tigers are always busy trying to find something to eat or a place to sleep, trying to defend and have sexual intercourse successfully. In the human form of life, however, one should be intelligent enough to ask what he is, why he has come into the world, what his duty is, who is the supreme controller, and what is the difference between dull matter and the living entity, etc. There are so many questions, and the person who is actually intelligent should simply inquire about the supreme source of everything, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. A living entity is always connected with a certain amount of intelligence, but in the human form of life, the living entity must inquire about his spiritual identity. This is real human intelligence. It is said that one who is simply conscious of the body is no better than an animal. Even though he be in a human... One is simply conscious of the body is no better than an animal, even though he be in the human form. In Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Krishna says, Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto matasmritir jnanam upohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. In the animal form, the living entity is completely forgetful of his relationship with God. This is called pohanam, or forgetfulness. In the human form of life, however, consciousness is more greatly developed, and consequently, the human being has a chance to understand his relationship with God. In the human form, one should utilize his intelligence by asking all these questions, just as Purañjana, the living entity, is asking the unknown girl where she has come from, what her business is, why she is present, etc. These are inquiries about Atma Tattva, self-realization. The conclusion is that unless the living entity is inquisitive about self-realization, he is nothing but an animal. Ka ete no patayeta ekadasha mahabhata eta valalana subru koyam tehi purasara. My dear lotus-eyed, my dear lotus-eyed, who are those 11 strong bodyguards with you? And who are those 10 specific servants? Who are those women following the 10 servants? And who is the snake that is preceding you? Purport. Let me just check everything's still running. Okay. Purport. The 10 strong servants of the mind are the 5 working senses and the 5 knowledge-gathering senses. All these 10 senses work under the... I don't know how you say this word. Aegis? Okay. And it means the protection, backing, or support of a particular person or organization. Okay. So all these 5 working senses and 5 knowledge-gathering senses, these 10 senses, work under the aegis of the mind. The mind and the 10 senses combine to become 11 strong bodyguards. The hundreds of women under the jurisdiction of the senses are addressed here as lalana. The mind works under the intelligence, and under the mind are the 10 senses, and under the 10 senses are innumerable desires to be fulfilled. Lalana means desires. All these, however, depend on the vital life force, which is here represented by the snake. As long as the vital life force is there, the mind works, and under the mind the senses work, and the senses gives rise to so many material desires. Actually, the living entity known as Purañjana is embarrassed by so much paraphernalia. All this paraphernalia simply constitutes different sources of anxiety, but one who is surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead and who leaves all business to Him is freed from such anxieties. Therefore, Prahlad Maharaj advises a person who is taken to the materialistic way of life, which is never permanent but always temporary, to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and leave aside all his so-called responsibilities in order to get free from all anxieties. Okay, we're ending with this verse. Tam hrir bhavanyasayat vagramapatim vichinvati kim munivar rahovane tvarangrikamapta samastakamam paparmakosha patita karagrat. I messed up in this first line. Tam hrir bhavanyasyata vagramapatim. There. Okay. My dear beautiful girl, you are exactly like the goddess of fortune, or the wife of Lord Shiva, or the goddess of learning, the wife of Lord Brahma. Although you must be one of them, I see that you are loitering in this forest. Indeed, you are as silent as the great sages. Is it that you are searching after your own husband? Whoever your husband may be, simply by understanding that you are so faithful to him, he will come to possess all opulences. I think you must be the goddess of fortune, but I do not see the lotus flower in your hands. Therefore, I am asking you where you have thrown that lotus. Purport. Everyone thinks that his intelligence is perfect. Sometimes one employs his intelligence in the worship of Uma, the wife of Lord Shiva, in order to obtain a beautiful wife. Sometimes when one wants to become as learned as Lord Brahma, he employs his intelligence in the worship of the goddess of learning, Saraswati. Sometimes when one wishes to become as opulent as Lord Vishnu, he worships the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi. In this verse, all these inquiries are made by King Purañjana, the living entity who is bewildered and does not know how to employ his intelligence. Intelligence should be employed in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As soon as one uses his intelligence in this way, the goddess of fortune automatically becomes favorable to him. The goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, never remains without her husband, Lord Vishnu. Consequently, when one worships Lord Vishnu, he automatically obtains the favor of the goddess of fortune. One should not, like Ravan, worship the goddess of fortune alone, for she cannot remain long without her husband. Thus, her other name is Chanchala, or restless. In this verse, it is clear that Purañjana is representing our intelligence while he is talking with the girl. He not only appreciated the shyness of the girl, but actually became more and more attracted by that shyness. He was actually thinking of becoming her husband, and consequently was asking her whether she was thinking of her prospective husband or whether she was married. This is an example of Bhoga Icha, the desire for enjoyment. I really like that style of flirting. Where have you thrown your lotus, Lakshmi? One who's attracted by such desires becomes conditioned in this material world, and one who is not so attracted attains liberation. King Purañjana was appreciating the beauty of the girl as if she were the goddess of fortune, but at the same time he was careful to understand that the goddess of fortune cannot be enjoyed by anyone except Lord Vishnu. Since he doubted whether the girl was the goddess of fortune, he inquired about the lotus flower. He inquired about the lotus flower she was not holding. The material world is also the goddess of fortune, because the material energy works under the direction of Lord Vishnu, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. The material world cannot be enjoyed by any living entity. If one so desires to enjoy it, he immediately becomes a demon like Ravan, Hiranyakashipu, or Kamsa. Because Ravan wanted to enjoy the goddess of fortune, Sita Devi, he was vanquished with all his family, wealth, and opulence. One can, however, enjoy that Maya bestowed upon the living entity by Lord Vishnu. The satisfaction of one's senses and desires means enjoying Maya, not the goddess of fortune. Alright, so that's all for today. What are we reading tomorrow? Let's see. So, Purañjana flatters the woman and requests her to become his wife. Then Purañjani, the woman, advocates Pravritti Marg and discourages Nivritti Marg, and happily agrees to become his wife. Pravritti Marg means the path of enjoyment, acquiring material sense gratification. Nivritti Marg means liberation. And then their enjoyment in the city, and they represent the 9 holes and other parts of the body. Purañjana fulfills all her desires, follows all her activities, and becomes her pet animal. Okay. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol. Jai Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Ju ki jai, Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju ki jai, Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashatara Shatashmad Shila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Gosai Maharaj Shila Gurudev ki jai, Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashatara Shatashmad Shila Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Gosai Maharaj ki jai, Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashatara Shatashmad Shila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashatara Shatashmad Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Gosai Maharaj ki jai. Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashatara Shatashmad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosai Prabhupada ki jai. Nitila Pravishta Mahabhagavat Srila Gorksharas Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nitila Pravishta Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Nitila Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Patadasha Gunath Shara Gosai Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki jai. Namachay Shri Hairas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Vraja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Sarva Abhishta Pradata Giriraj Maharaj ki jai. Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund ki jai. Shri Muna Devi Ganga Devi ki jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai, Shri Bhakti Devi ki jai, Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya ki jai, Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo, Shri Nārada Rishi ki jai. Vindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavashacha Krishna Bhakti Padadevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha. Pancha kalpatarubhyashta kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namaha. And here is a picture of Nārada Muni giving instructions to King, what's his name? Prachini Barhishat. See? Oops. Beautiful painting, huh? It's also the cover of the book. All right. Dandavat pranams, Mantra Murti Mataji, and Purañjana Prabhu, and Indira Mataji, Rup Manjari, everybody else that's there, Raseshwari Mataji, Dandavat pranams.